My question is, how does arousal mist in the air that quickly? Finally, after months of being harassed, I have read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And then after several more months of being harassed to make a video about it, I am finally sitting down and we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about everything that I have remembered in the 800 pages of the book, because that is what I do for you on this YouTube channel. I suffer for you. I have decided that if I'm gonna be forced to read through 800 pages of fairy dick smut and also sit down and make a video about it, as I have been doing a video for all the other 4 books, it's about time that I get a fucking break for once. So this video is gonna be themed around self-care. I am going to prepare for myself a luxurious bath to commend myself for being able to finish this book that put me in a month-long reading slump in the first place. To set up the atmosphere, I will be using a Rhysand scented candle because we can't forget our feminist king. He is the reason why we have rights in the first place. I will also be wearing a face mask. This will be animal themed to match all of the furries throughout the series. I will also be eating cake, which is sitting in my fridge right now, just because Nesta eats cake throughout the book, so I figured it would be fitting. And of course, a bubble bath is not complete without a bath bomb. So in this video, I will be making a bath bomb in the mold of a fairy penis. This is a silk mold that I got from a store called Fairy Fizzle. We really can't get any more accurate than that. I ordered this in the largest size. If you look really closely, you can see a vein popping out. This is also paying tribute to the scandal that occurred over 2 years ago when a fan box for the A Court of Thorns and Roses series decided to put out boxes where fans of the book could get dick soap. People in the book community were all up in arms about this, so I figured I would bring this back and try to recreate my own. But the best form of self-care, in my opinion, is getting money, which is why this video is sponsored by Babbel, the #1 language learning app in the world with over 10 million subscriptions worldwide. Learning a new language is actually pretty useful for self-care because it encourages self-improvement and also benefits your mental health, which is something that I clearly need to work on. Babbel is a super useful app for that. It's much different from other language learning apps. You only need 10 to 15 minutes a day to start to see results, so it's super easy to incorporate into your daily routine. You don't even need Wi-Fi. You can download the lessons on your phone. You can take it anywhere you go. University studies actually show that 15 hours of Babbel is the equivalent of a semester of college Spanish. The first lesson is free, and they recently added this new feature called Babbel Live. This is where you can add live classes to your existing subscription for an additional fee, or just subscribe to them as a standalone product. But it's a really cool way to access new features like podcasts and short stories, and basically new ways to fully immerse yourself into this new language. Now let's make some dick soap while I talk about all the dicks I saw in A Court of Silver Flames. Why else do you think this shit was 800 pages long? It was thick and girthy because it had a lot of ground to cover. If you are new to this channel, you might not know that despite my channel being a variety of content like travel vlogs, movie reactions, book reviews of tons of literary novels that I enjoy every single month, the one thing that people seem to know me for is my videos about A Court of Thorns and Roses. This is a very popular fantasy series about an ordinary human girl named Feyre who meets a fairy, gets dicked down by him in the first book. Then in the second book, after the big battle of the first book, the two of them end up having PTSD, except the difference is we have to sympathize with Feyre for her PTSD, while we have to villainize Tamlin, her original love interest, because now he's super controlling and abusive. So in book 2, she ends up running away from him. Her new love interest becomes Rhysand, who has the biggest dick of all the fairies in the land, and he is a super feminist. He was originally kind of the bad guy in the first book, but then in book 2, it is revealed that he was actually a feminist all along. A line that he says a lot to Feyre is, "It's your choice." And that is so revolutionary to her because she never felt like she had a choice in the abusive relationship. So now that another man has told her that she has a choice, she feels empowered to do so. So they get together for book 2 and 3. There's also a a Christmas novella that comes out that's kind of like a Hallmark special of what they've been up to after the war, which is basically just Feyre walking around and seeing all the war veterans and feeling sorry for them because she's so rich now, but she's also super charitable, so she regularly talks about how she donates to them. And so they're just the perfect couple. They're thriving. I thought this would be the end of everything and that I would never have to read this series again. But Sarah J Maas knew that she needed to get her coin. There is now a new spin-off series with the first book called A Court of Silver Flames. And this follows Nesta, who is the sister of Feyre. Throughout the original trilogy, she has always walked around like she has a stick up her ass. She's like the biggest bitch in the family. She's super antisocial. She's not interested in partaking in any of this fairy foolishness. However, in the trilogy, she and her other sister had fallen into a cauldron, which turns you into a fairy. Now she has all of these powers even though she doesn't want them. Nesta's storyline is definitely incomplete because you can tell that she is just miserable. She has unresolved issues that she has avoided dealing with. And so it makes sense for us to have a spin-off with her character. You could actually argue that Nesta is one of the more complex characters of the entire series because she definitely deals with a lot of conflicting emotions, for blaming herself for the death of their father, for bottling up her emotions, for feeling like she was forced into becoming a fairy and grappling with the powers that she never even wanted. But we're not here for complexity. We're just here for the fairy dick. So here I am scaping the shape of the fairy penis to make sure that the shape is accurate. I'm patting down the girth. I feel like an artist sculpting this penis with my bare hands. Is this what God felt like? There's a part in the book where Nesta was playing with Cassian's ballsack, so this moment can be representative of that. This is kind of fun, a little ballsack moment. Here it is, my soap penis. So while we wait for the penises to get dry, I'm gonna go ahead and work on my facial skincare, just like how Nesta also got a facial throughout the book. I'm just gonna go over basically any parts of the book that stood out to me, which means most of it is smut, because like, what else are we here for? The plot? What fucking plot? Basically, the way that this book starts out is we see that Nesta is a hot mess. She is clearly in a bad place in her life and spiraling. She's been going into taverns, getting into fights with people, drinking the whole night, bringing some stranger home. Then the next day she kicks them out because she's like, I don't even know you, bye bitch. So she's just been getting messy. If you are curious, the book also mentions in this part here, Nesta finished washing away the sweat and other remnants of last night. The sex hadn't been bad. She had had better, but also much worse. Girl, please treat yourself. We don't have time for this mediocre sex when you got all the fairy schlong right there out your door. Literally, Cassian is waiting right there. But the book explains, she had taught herself what she liked. She had obtained a monthly contraceptive tea from her local apothecary, and then she had brought that first male here. So we get a little bit of world building here. There are no condoms in the fairyland. They just have a contraceptive tea that they drink to make sure that they don't get pregnant, which means Nesta has been raw dogging it in a pandemic? Girl. From the very first chapter, it starts off with Cassian waiting outside Nesta's door, and he's working up the courage to come speak to her because there's been unresolved romantic tension between Nesta and Cassian for a long while, but they've never like done anything yet. This feels very slimy. I don't know if this was a good idea or not, but we're gonna commit to it. Fun fact, I had a meeting with my manager at my full-time job, and he said that he thought it was cool that I had a YouTube channel and he wanted me to like talk about it with the rest of the team, to talk more about my videography work. And I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. So the whole point of why Cassian is showing up is because he needs to bring Nesta over to Feyre, her sister, and the other fairies, because they are planning on having an intervention with Nesta because she's been a messy bitch. He says, Feyre wants you at the house. And Nesta says, which one? Which one? This bitch has multiple houses? In the Christmas novella, we had to put up with 200 pages of her walking around fairyland, looking at all the destroyed homes and looking at the war veterans who are now homeless and feeling so sorry for them. What the fuck were you doing, Feyre? We had to read about how charitable you are. Meanwhile, you're living like Jeff Bezos. And she's always like, oh, I wish there was more that I could do. Bitch, give up your house to the homeless. You don't need more than one. According to Nesta, she says that Feyre has five. Five fucking houses? Are you fucking kidding me? I say when we eat the rich, we fucking start with Feyre. Already, I think Nesta is a more interesting character than Feyre ever was. Personally, I prefer to read about women characters who are spiraling because, you know, relatable. I also think it's funny whenever she calls out Feyre for being rich because, yeah, the bitch deserves to get called out for that. During this conversation, Cassian takes this as an opportunity to check Nesta out. He took the invitation to survey her. Long bare legs, an elegant sweep of hips, tapered waist, too damn thin, and full inviting breasts that were at odds with the new sharp angles of her body. On any other female, those magnificent breasts might have been enough cause for him to begin courting her the moment he met her. Ugh, I hate how her tapered waist is too damn thin. She's just too skinny in all the right places. Also, what does it mean when he describes her breasts as inviting? What makes a breast inviting? Is this gonna be like Beauty and the Beast where the breasts are gonna get animated and they're gonna be like, be our guest, be our guest. Come on over, come in. So in the next chapter, Nesta goes over to one of Feyre's many houses. She gets into trouble because all the time when she's been going out and drinking, she's been billing it over to Feyre and Rhysand so that they could pick up the tab. Which I guess is like a jerk move, but again, they have 5 houses, so I don't see what the big deal is. Cassian had been eating an early breakfast with them this morning when Rhys had gotten the bill for Nesta's night out. When Rhys had read each item aloud, bottles of rare wine, exotic foods, gambling debts, Feyre had stared at her plate until silent tears dripped into her scrambled eggs. First of all, it's not that serious. You have 5 houses. You can deal with a bill for a couple of drinks. I don't know why you're acting so dramatic about it, like she's robbing you, when you're literally living like Jeff Bezos and you have 5 properties around fairyland. Second of all, what a weird imagery to even describe. Like, he is reading out a bill that is probably less than 1% of how much they make, and she is staring at her eggs and the tears drip down to her scrambled eggs. Like,
they ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
So she argues with Nesta and she says, all you have done is help yourself to our money. And then Nesta replies, your mate's money. Ooh, that's fucking right. Call her out, bitch. Thank you so much for taking time out of your homemaking and shopping to remember me. That's fucking right, bitch. What the fuck have you been doing, Feyre, all this time? You're literally just a rich housewife at this point. Why are you bagging on your sister when it ain't even your money? You just married into money and big dick. So already I'm like, you know what? Nesta is a real bitch. She just says what the fuck is up. Listen, if I'm gonna have to suffer through another book, I might as well read about a bitch who tells it like it is. Speaking of telling it like it is, after the intervention, the boys have a talk. And it is as disgusting as you would imagine. Cassian and Rhysand apparently partake in locker room talk where they like to brag about how much sex they're having. Cassian tells Rhysand, you need to get out in the practice ring more, brother. Don't want that mate of yours to find any soft bits. She never finds any soft bits when I'm around her, Rhys said, and Cassian laughed again. Ha 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 ha. Dude, bro, I get it. It's cause you're hard all the time around her. What a good one, bro. Rhysand continues, I already told the servants to clear out the rest of the day as soon as you take Nesta up to the house. Cassian replies, I think the servants hear you fighting plenty. Rhys threw him a wicked smile. It's not the fighting I don't want them hearing. Oh, bro, that means they're having sex all the time, bro. Nice one, bro. But remember, Rhysand is still a feminist. A feminist who's still getting some. Ayo! Later, when Cassian is with Feyre, it says he wondered if his high lady had noticed the disappearing servants yet. The secret smile in Feyre's eyes told him she knew plenty about it and what was coming for her in a few minutes. Thank the gods he was getting out of here. He'd probably have to fly to the sea itself not to hear Rhys or feel his power when he ... Cassian stopped himself before he could finish the thought. Feel his power when he what? When he what? Do I really want to know how you would have ended that sentence? He and his brothers had put a good deal of distance between the stupid youths they had been, fucking any female who showed interest, often in the same room as each other, and the males they were now. Wait a minute, they banged any female who showed interest in the same room as each other? Why? Rhysand is rich, he has like 1 billion houses. I assume those houses have different rooms. Why do they have to be in the same room as each other? What, so they could cheer each other on, give each other high fives like, bro, I knew you meant it when you said no soft bits. So the point of this intervention is for them to tell Nella to stop with her reckless behavior. She can't be a little hoe anymore and she needs to take life seriously at this point. So they decide that they are gonna bring her over to the House of Wind where she'll be staying and she'll be training with Cassian so that she can work on becoming stronger and learning how to use her powers. So the chapter ends with her saying, where am I supposed to go? Cassian says, you're coming with me to train. Come to train or train to come? I guess we'll find out very soon. So she is detoxing in this house with Cassian and Azriel, who is another fairy that for some reason is there even though he doesn't even do anything. So I don't even know why he was added there in the first place. But at first she is very resistant towards it and she refuses to train. So there are quite a few times where she tries to leave the house. The thing about the House of Wind is that there's like 1 million steps and it's really hard to get out of it without knowing, which she can't do. So there's this whole passage where she tries to climb down the steps. And to give you an idea about how painful it is, it says, in the quiet, pain set in, barking, bleeding pain across every part of her body. The coppery tang of blood filled her mouth. Something wet and warm slid down her neck. A sniff told her it was blood too. Barking, bleeding pain? Is her body a dog or a goat? You're telling me she has to walk down a flight of stairs, leave a trail of blood behind, and also her kneecaps are barking like a dog and bleeding like a goat? She doesn't need training at this point. She needs to see a fucking doctor because that's not normal. Speaking of the weird writing, I want to take a moment to talk about it. We already know that the writing style throughout these books are a choice, but something about reading 800 pages of it in a book really got to me this time. I was reading this and I was wondering, why is this shit so long? And then I realized the author will literally repeat phrases, the same phrases over and over throughout the book. For example, a phrase that she uses all the time is like calls to like. I was buddy reading this with Rachel from Reads with Rachel, who was reading it on her ebook, and I asked her to search for all the times they said this phrase. So thank you for the screenshots in advance because it is a lot if you look at it. Gwyn considered the railing, the open drops into the darkness beyond it. Like calls to like. What does it have to do with the cauldron? Nesta pushed. Like calls to like, Feyre murmured. Nesta turned to the small female. I don't know how to find anything. Like calls to like, Amren countered. I wished it to let go, and it did, Nesta said, surveying Amren with cool disdain. Like calls to like, Rhys said. Even if it can open doors and undo spells, Rhys asked. Like calls to like, Feyre said into the puzzled quiet. I was trying to reach for my power, Nesta murmured. This answered instead. Like calls to like, Feyre repeated. Nesta tapped her foot in a swift beat. Rhysand's words on the mask couldn't keep me out. The mask wished for me to come, so it allowed me through. Maybe the harp will do the same. Like calls to like, as you all enjoy saying. Bitch, why do you enjoy saying it? I would kind of get it if maybe one character just really likes to use that phrase, but these are multiple characters who keep on using the same phrase over and over. That's the thing that I noticed about the writing throughout the book, and in general, it is very repetitive and oftentimes it's overwriting. The author will write several sentences that all mean the same thing. She just writes it differently, but then it becomes way longer than it needs to be, and you can tell there's no editor involved in here, or if they are, they're taking a nap or something. And I'll give you some examples that Rachel kindly sent over to me about what we mean with overwriting. So, the black water nipping at her thrashing heels was freezing, not the bite of winter chill or even the burn of solid ice, but something colder, deeper. The cold of the gaps between stars, the cold of a world before light, the cold of hell, true hell, she realized as she bucked against the strong hands trying to shove her into that cauldron. True hell, because that was Elaine lying on the stone cold floor with a red-haired, one-eyed fae male hovering over her. True hell, worse than the inky dust mere inches under her toes. And the sound of that voice, the voice of the male who had done this to Elaine. She knew she was going into the cauldron, knew she would lose this fight, knew no one was coming to save her, not sobbing Feyre, not not Feyre's gagged former lover, not her devastated new mate, not Cassian, broken and bleeding on the floor. The warrior was still trying to rise on trembling arms to reach her. This is just an example of one passage, and you can already tell there is so much repetition. Writers use repetition in a stylistic way, like when you want to emphasize something. But Sarah J. Maas is doing it all the fucking time in every single page, and that is why this book is 800 pages long, because it's just the same sentences over and over. If you look at the excerpts here, first of all, she is talking about how cold it is over and over. She keeps on repeating the cold of the X, the cold of the Y, the cold of the Z, and then she talks about true hell. A paragraph about what true hell is, another paragraph about what true hell is, a phrase about a voice, another phrase about the voice, then a bunch of repetition about what Nesta knows. She knew X, she knew Y, she knew Z. But then even within what she knows, not only does she know what is going on, she knows what is not gonna go on. Not stopping Feyre, not Feyre's gagged former lover, not Cassian, not blah 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 blah. So it's kind of like a Russian doll where you're just seeing the same phrases over and over, but even within those same phrases, it's also a bunch of other similar phrases. Imagine this writing style for 800 pages long. This is what I had to read for 800 pages, and then you bitches on Goodreads were tracking my reading progress every day, and you were like, why haven't you finished it yet? It's been a month. Bitch, this is a sludge to get through. I'm reading 10 pages of the same fucking thing happening over and over. I am convinced that Sarah J. Maas, when she writes, she just writes whatever she wants, and there's no editing involved. She doesn't cut anything out, because if she did, this book would not be 800 pages. It could have been like 300 pages max, because literally you could have condensed everything. There were so many unnecessary scenes and so much unnecessary writing. I think she just sits at a laptop and she just word dumps a whole bunch of words. She'll send over an 800 page manuscript and then they'll fucking publish it because it doesn't matter. Readers will still read it anyway, think it's fucking amazing, and she'll get her coin. As a writer, honestly, I admire that. I admire the fact that she can sit down and just word dump a whole bunch of bullshit and then people will just eat that shit up. So I'm not a hater for her in that aspect. I think she should get her coin. I think if that works for her, that's awesome. But as a reader, this was torture for me. I'm sorry. I respect the hustle, but goddamn. Anyway, back to the story. Most of the time we spend it with Nesta and Cassian and Azriel, the third wheel, staying at the house. Now obviously when a male and a female are in a house together, there's a lot of sexual tension. Cassian has to train Nesta to fight and learn how to harness her powers, which is a really great opportunity for sexual tension that's subtle and slow and nuanced as these two characters learn to live and fight together. Cassian said with a wicked smile, "It could be any time, dawn's first light, or when I'm bathing, or even after a long, hard day of practice." She didn't miss the slight emphasis he put on long, hard. Wow, the sexual tension in their banter is so subtle. It's so subtle that even the author herself has to point out the emphasis of long and hard, just in case you didn't get the memo. Throughout the book, Cassian tries to rile Nesta up and get her horny. He didn't halt the hand she laid on his muscled chest, or when she pushed against that chest, backing him into the wall, his wings splaying on impact. He just stared and stared at her, marveling, hungry. Nesta didn't, couldn't move as Cassian leaned to whisper in her ear, "The first time I saw that look on your face, you were still human, and I nearly went to my knees before you." His breath caressed the shell of her ear and she couldn't stop her eyes from fluttering shut. "Your power is a song, and one I've waited a very, very long time to hear, Nesta." Her back arched slightly at the way he said her name, the way he bit out the second syllable, like he was imagining clamping his teeth down on other parts of her. And then the rest of the passage is them getting closer, really close. Nesta is like wobbling because she can barely keep her knees together, but Cassian is teasing her because he's just trying to rile her up. Cassian's hands remained at his sides though, as if waiting for her to give permission. Nesta pulled her head back, away, just enough to see his features. Her knees nearly wobbled at the desire blazing in them, liquid, unrelenting desire, all fixed upon her. She couldn't get her breath down as she drowned in that stare, as low, sensitive parts of her tightened and began throbbing. Her breast becoming heavy and aching. His nostrils flared, sensing that too. Girl, you are wobbling all over the place. Your breasts are suddenly achy. There's liquid blazing inside of you. Are you sure you're just not having a heat stroke? Why do you sound like you're about to pass the fuck out? Go see a doctor. Cassian whispered in her ear, do you know what I'm going to think of tonight? He smiled, nothing but wickedness and challenge. I'm going to think of that look on your face. I'm always thinking of that look on your face. Ah, yes. We love a man who loves a nut face. So that night, she obviously can't sleep because she's so hot and riled. The sheets chafed, strangled her, smothered her with their heat until sweat ran down her body. Nesta lay in the darkness, her breathing uneven, her body flushed and aching. Girl, I really think you have a fever or something because you are like being way too extra right now. But she keeps on thinking about what he said, about how he loves a nut face. So she starts to imagine it. She could see it, Cassian in his own bed, sprawled out like a dark king, gripping himself, pumping hard. She moaned into her pillow as her fingers slid between her legs, instantly slippery with the wetness pulled there, which hadn't gone away since she had been left standing in the hallway. Her hips arched with the touch, and she gritted her teeth, letting out a long hiss as she dragged her fingers down her aching, throbbing center. So basically, she gets really turned on and she fingers herself that night. But if you think that was horny, just you wait till the next chapter where we see Cassian's perspective that night. Cassian hadn't slept well. It was hard to sleep well when he had been so aroused he had to pleasure himself not once, but 3 times just to calm the hell down enough to close his eyes. 3 times? How much is in that tank? You telling me Cassian was so horny he had to whack his meat not once, not twice, but 3 times just so that he can go to sleep. So he wakes up the next day, he sees Nesta. She's reading a smut book, of course, and he asks her what she's reading. But they can't even focus on their conversation because they're both way too horny. She lifted her eyes to him again, spine stiffening, like she was working hard as hell to make herself meet his stare. Her fingers clenched her fork, and when he looked at them, she pulled her hand under the table as if it were blazing with proof. His blood heated as he realized the blush, her embarrassment. He made himself take deep, steadying breaths. They had to train together for the next 2 hours. Being at attention wasn't only unhelpful, but inappropriate in the training ring. It didn't make him stop picturing it. That hand between her legs, her body as aching for release as his had been. The way she'd probably bitten her lip just as he had to keep from crying out. His cock grew hard, pushing at his pants to the point of pain. Cassian shifted in his seat, trying to free up any space for himself. It only succeeded in making the hard seam rub against his cock, the friction enough to make him grit his teeth. Can you imagine you're at the breakfast table while this shit is going on? You're just trying to enjoy your eggs and bacon. These two are just at the edge of the table trying to not bust a nut, and you're just like, wow, the eggs are really nice today, isn't it? What's going on? Why are you guys shaking the table? The book, Nesta said, a bit breathlessly, is about ... Her nostrils flared and her eyes went a bit unfocused. A book. Interesting, Cassian murmured. Sounds great. Bitch, Nesta was so horny, she couldn't even describe what the book was about. She literally said, the book is about a book. She can't even get proper sentences out. This is how down bad she is right now. He had to get out of this room, had to sort his shit out before he went upstairs. The heat between them didn't belong in the training ring, but he couldn't rise from his chair. If he did, Nesta would see precisely how she had affected him. That is, if she hadn't already scented it and understood the shift in his smell. The smell? How would she be able to smell you through your pants while you're sitting across from each other at the table? How stinky are you? Later, she finally meets him to train. He was waiting in the ring. The portrait... Thank God, I thought that was my neighbor. Oh, well, I'm moving out tomorrow anyway. He was waiting in the ring, the portrait of a swaggering warrior. Nesta didn't dare look at his pants, to what she could have sworn she had glimpsed straining at the strays and buttons when he had fled the room. Straining at the strays and buttons? My man is about to bust. Not only has his smell been stanking up the house everywhere, his belt is about to fucking snap off and be a hazard. It's gonna be like a slingshot. They spend so much time being horny. You must be wondering, do they actually train? Yes, they do. I mean, kinda. Nesta rolled her shoulders, approaching him. More stretching and balance? No. We'll do the warm-up, and then we're moving into some core work. She gaped. Her ... Core? Abdominals, he clarified, and pink washed across his face. He cleared his throat. Filthy mind. He flicked her cheek. too much smut. Ignoring their horniness, she's basically just doing abdominal exercises. I don't know why this is like such a foreign concept to her. This is just like basic stuff you do at the gym. I don't know why I thought it was gonna be like a more epic thing, because they literally had to go up to the mountains and train there, and they're fairies and they have magic. I thought their training would be more epic, but it's literally just her doing planks. Why do they even need to go up in the mountains for that? Couldn't they just follow a YouTube tutorial? Her training is literally what I do at home watching a YouTube tutorial on a yoga mat. It's literally not even that crazy. Finally, after a couple of training sessions, things get tense between them, but they use it as an excuse to make out. His teeth flashed, any semblance of softness gone. I told you once and I'll say it again. Don't take that snide fucking tone when you speak about him. He's not my high lord. I may speak of him as I wish. She made to step away, but he gripped her wrist, holding her in place. Let go. Make me. Use that training and make me. You know when a character says, make me, shit is about to go down. Panties are about to fly in the air. Let's fucking go. We spent several pages reading about them making out. I'm not gonna read the full thing because then this video will be way longer than it needs to be. She kisses him, he kisses her back, he knocks her into a wall so that he could make out with her against the wall. She opened her mouth and his tongue swept in, the kiss punishing and savage, blah 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 blah. She met him stroke for stroke and all sense of self went flying from her. He slid his hands around her, grasping her ass and lifted her into the air. She wrapped her legs around his middle and moaned again as he pressed herself between her thighs, blah 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 blah. She scrambled to regain any sense of control, of sanity, found herself wanting to hand it all over to him, to let him touch and touch and touch her, lick and suckle and fill her, blah 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 blah. Nesta wedged her hand between their bodies, seeking him out. Cassian groaned again, long and low, as her hand cupped him through the leather of his pants, the breath still out of her, the sheer size of him. Dash mark. Her mouth watered. She was aching, so wet that every stitch of the seam down the center of her pants was torture. So now she's rubbing him through his pants. His hips thrust into her hand with a strength that made her core throb to the point of pain, imagining that force, that size and heat buried deep in her. Another punishing rub of her palm, a scrape of teeth at his neck, and Cassian erupted. His wings tucked in tight as he came, and each spurt of his cock shuddered through his pants, echoing along her hand as she stroked and stroked him. So he comes, she smirks at him, she's about to walk away, but she also says, someone's quick off the mark. Ooh, got him. That's right. All Nesta had to do was rub him over the pants and he already busted a nut. He'd come in his pants after a few touches from Nesta, soaking himself like he was no better than he'd been in his youth. The taste of her had been like fire and steel and a winter sunrise. That had just been her mouth, her neck. If he got his tongue between her legs, ... he shipped it in his seat. Damn, if it's that intense, what is it gonna be like when he goes between her legs? Is it gonna be like lava? Cause like, we're really trying to amp it up every single time from here, right? He's about to tongue a volcano at this point. The next morning, he is having breakfast with Azriel, who, if you forgot, was in the house the entire fucking time. Did something happen that I, as your chaperone, should know about? Azriel's dry question dragged Cassian from his rising arousal. From the amusement on his brother's face, he knew Az could not only sense that arousal, but see it on his face. He can sense his arousal? That means you have a smelly peen, bro. You better wash that shit. Imagine being the third wheel roommate here. You walk into the house and you just smell jizz everywhere. Even later on, from Nesta's point of view, she has her hair down and Cassian tells her, I've never seen you with your hair down. Nesta couldn't stop her swallow as she lifted her gaze. His eyes were blazing, yet he remained leaning against the door, hands trapped behind his body as if he were physically restraining himself. His scent drifted to her, darker, muskier than usual. She had bet all the money she didn't have that it was the scent of his arousal. Bro, why is he so stinky? People should not be able to smell you through your pants. The fact that the scent of his arousal is constantly mentioned tells me that his penis is fucking stinky and that is just nasty. My question is, how does arousal mist in the air that quickly? What arousal spores are they releasing into the air? That just sounds bad for the environment. First we had to deal with COVID-19, now we gotta deal with Cassian 69. This is exactly why you should still wear a mask even when you go outside, because you don't know what nasty spores are in the air. Apparently Cassian is just releasing them all. Why are you even here? You made it clear enough that last night was a mistake. I never said that. You didn't need to. I saw it in your eyes. His gaze snapped to hers. The only mistake was that I came before I could taste you. Nesta knew he didn't mean her mouth or her skin. Cassian went on. The only mistake was that you ran off before I could get on my knees. Girl, the only mistake is that I'm still reading this book. He said it with such intent that her breast pebbled. His eyes dipped again, and when he saw her nipples hard against the silk of her nightgown, ... his entire being seemed to focus on it, on her. All 500 years of being a trained warrior, an apex predator, all of it narrowing on her. Damn, his entire being is focusing on it like an apex predator? This guy is just like, ooh, hardened nipples, target acquired. Now they dive into round 2 of Sexy Times. Now before I get into the details, let me take off my mask because this shit is drying out. Which is not a problem that Nesta has, clearly. Cassian lunged for her, a beast freed of its cage, and she barely had time to twist toward the edge of the bed before his lips were on hers, devouring and claiming. Deep purring sounds vibrated from his chest through her fingers as she clawed off his jacket, his shirt ripping through the fabric. He tore his lips from hers only long enough to pull his shirt away, the fabric snaring on his wings before falling to the floor. So then they go at it for a while. Again, I'm gonna speed things up because I'm only on like page 200 and something and we got 800 pages in total. So they're making out on the bed. He takes off her clothes. Cassian let out a sound from the back of his throat, from his gut, like some sort of starved, tormented creature. He stared at her breast and she couldn't breathe under that burning gaze. Couldn't breathe as his head dipped and he wrapped his lips around her nipple. So he's sucking on some titty, he's biting them. They're having a great time. Cassian gave her a feral, purely male smile. I can kind of imagine a feral smile, but what does purely male smile mean? Are smiles gendered now? And it's not just a male smile, but it's a purely male smile. What does that mean? What does it mean to be purely male? So now he's licking her coochie, parting her with one hand, he dragged his tongue clear up her center. The world fractured, reformed, and fractured again. Wait, okay, so the world fractured and then reformed and then fractured again, all just from him licking her coochie. That's how good his cunnilingus game is. If the world can literally fucking explode and then come back together and then explode all over again. His tongue game is something else. It's otherworldly, that's for sure. You taste, he growled against her, making his way up again toward the bundle of nerves in short teasing licks. Even more delicious than I dreamed. Nesta whimpered, ah. So wet, he breathed and licked at her entrance as if determined to consume every drop of her. Are you always this wet for me, Nesta? Cassian snickered as if he knew the answer anyway. Why would you ask if you already knew the answer anyway? And why would you snicker right after that? Was he just licking it and then he was like, are you always this wet for me, Nesta? I know the answer. Now he's licking her and then he put a finger inside of her. Next page, he adds a second finger inside of her. I mean, this is also typical, but when are we gonna see 2 in the pink and 1 in the stink? That's what I wanna know. Nesta rode his hand, his face grinding into him with abandon. Holy gods! Cassian's teeth grazed against her. Nesta! The sound of her name on his lips against her most sensitive place sent her mind scattering into eternity. And then she climaxes. I assume the world has fractured and then reformed and then fractured again. Cassian was panting, still hard as he rose up and stared at her. She couldn't move, couldn't remember how to move. No one had ever done that to her, made her feel like that. It had knocked the breath from her, the thoroughness of her pleasure, like the world could be remade in the force of what had erupted from her. The dick was so good that you don't even remember how to move. And if you think that's wild from Nesta's point of view, in the next chapter, we see what Cassian was thinking of. Watching Nesta climax had been as close to a religious experience as Cassian had ever had. It had rocked him to his very core, and only pure will and pride had kept him from spilling in his pants again. Only pure will and pride had made him back off the bed when she had reached for him. Only pure will and pride had made him leave the room when all he'd wanted to do was to plunge his cock into that sweet, tight warmth and ride her until they were both screaming. Again, very repetitive writing. We have 3 sentences that start off with only pure will and pride to describe how he had to really hold back from busting a nut. I do want to point out the first sentence. Watching her climax was like a religious experience. When he saw her climax, he was like, take me to fucking church. This shit just made me an atheist. So you would think after they had their fun, the fog of horniness has been lifted and now they can continue training and going about their daily activities. But no, they are still horny after afterward. He couldn't get her perfect taste out of his mouth. Not as he washed for bed. Not as he pumped himself dry, soaking his sheets. Not as he ate breakfast. Couldn't stop feeling the clamp of her around his fingers like a burning silken fist. He'd washed his hands a dozen times by the time he faced Nesta in a training ring, and he could still smell her there, could still feel her, taste her. Bitch, don't take this to the training ring. Other people are using this training ring. No, seriously, throughout training, Nesta decides to bring these priestesses along with her so that they could train alongside with her. And the reason for that is because the priestesses have been through a lot of trauma and sexual assault. They are taking training as a way to kind of like reclaim their power and learn how to feel strong again. I am very uncomfortable with this kind of environment around these priestesses. You can't still be smelling like coochie in front of my Christian suburbs. But they don't care, because even when Nesta is watching Cassian and Azriel fight, she is just so horny that she daydreams about the three of them having a threesome. Seeing them spar had been overwhelming. Their beautiful forms tattooed and scarred and carved with muscle, gleaming with sweat as they fought with a viciousness and intelligence she had never seen. ... She had been sweating herself when they finished, wondering what it'd be like to be between those two male bodies, letting them turn all that lethal attention on worshipping her. You nasty bitch, we're supposed to be reclaiming our power, getting stronger, being a girl boss, and you're over here thinking about a threesome with these two men? I guess we have to, because that's the only role Azriel has in this story, an imaginary threesome that never happens. Damn, if you're gonna daydream about it, I might as well read the real thing happening. Now, of course, it's not just all about sex. There are some tender moments that happen between Cassian and Nesta as well. For example, Cassian has to grapple with the fact that he has to kill someone later on. He has a moral dilemma about it because it doesn't feel good to murder someone. He has a heart, he has a conscience, and he is revealing this vulnerability to Nesta. And Nesta is deeply touched by this. Cassian was good. In his soul, in his warrior's heart, Cassian was good in a way Nesta knew most people were not. In a way she knew she was not and would never be. He was not a warrior who killed on a whim, but a male who carefully considered every life he had to take, who defend what he loved until death. Shame rushed through her. Shame and anger and a wild sort of desperation. She couldn't abide the pain in his eyes, teetering on the brink of despair, couldn't stand the absence of the grinning and winking and swaggering she knew so well. She'd do anything to get rid of that look in his eyes, even for a few moments. Wow, that is so sweet. She sees that he is in a vulnerable state of mind, and she wants him to know that he's really a good person deep down, even though he has to do unpleasant but necessary things. So she's like, how can I relieve him of this moral burden that's been so heavy on him? I know, I'm gonna give him a blowjob. Nesta braced her hands on the arms of his chair as she brushed a kiss to his neck. He trembled and she kissed the hard knot in the center of his throat, licked it. Let me, she said against his neck, please. She didn't kiss his mouth. She didn't want that distraction, not as she slid between him and the table and dropped to her knees. The muscles in his thighs shifted against her as she pulled him free and nearly gasped. His cock was enormous, beautiful and hard and absolutely enormous. Her mouth dried out. Every plan she'd had requiring sudden reassessment. There was no way he'd fit entirely in her mouth. Perhaps no way he'd even fit in her body. But she sure as hell wanted to try. I mean, it's true. What else are you gonna do when the man you love is upset and is dealing with the moral dilemma of having to take another life? Do you talk him through his feelings? No, you go on your knees and you suck that good peen. She licked up his shaft in one long motion, rubbed her thighs together as she tasted him, felt all that hot, proud steel against her mouth. So then it goes on to explain how she licks him up and down, and then he fills her mouth, but then she's still going at it. Cassian's hand speared into her hair, gripping, and she realized he was holding himself back. Didn't want to ram himself into her, hurt her, displease her, and that wouldn't do. Not at all. She wanted him undone, wanted him grabbing her head and fucking her mouth as hard as she wished. So when Nesta took him into her mouth again, hand working in unison, she dragged her teeth, lightly enough to hurt, just a bit. And that's what get him, just a little teeth scrape action like your donkey from Shrek, you know, with your front teeth. That's enough to do it. So then he busts a nut in her mouth. He didn't care that they were in the dining room, that a wall of windows and doors lined half the space and anyone flying by might see. Anyone might see? Sir, at least close the goddamn blinds. Imagine you're just an innocent little fairy flying around in the sky, and then you turn around and you see some dude busting a nut in her. Not in my Christian suburbs or my Christian skies. She took him deep and moaned so loudly it reverberated along his cock and straight into his balls. Reverberated? Straight into his balls? Is this a fucking echo chamber? She's just like, whoa! He made to pull out, but Nesta refused to move. He growled, his fingers clamping on her head to still her. I want to be inside you, he managed to say, his voice like gravel. But Nesta looked up at him again from under her lashes, and he watched his flame disappear into her mouth. His tip bumped against the back of her throat. Bro. Excuse me? We have already established that his dick is probably like over 3 feet long, so he just fucking spearheaded his way through her mouth. How is she able to do this? He clenched his teeth. I want to finish inside you. Nesta only huffed a laugh and sucked him down so deep that he couldn't stop it. Couldn't stop the release as she slid her other hand into his pants and cupped his balls, squeezing softly. Cassian came with a roar that shook the glasses on the table, arcing up into her as he spilled himself down her throat. Imagine you're having just like a nice dinner and then the glasses start shaking and you're like, God fucking damn it, not this shit again. So he decides that he's gonna bang her on the table right now. He can no longer wait anymore. Except they start to hear footsteps down the hall because Azriel is starting to come closer. And for some reason, despite them being totally shameless about releasing their arousal spores everywhere and being perverts in front of everybody, all of a sudden, now is the time that they decide to put their dick back in their pants and try to pretend like everything is chill. Also, I'm pretty sure that Azriel knows what you're doing anyway, because from the way that you describe it, it sounds like you're just screaming the whole entire house down. Like you're refracturing the world and then piecing it back together and then refracturing again. Surely people have noticed something is amiss. You're literally causing the table to shake with all the glasses. There's a fucking earthquake going on. You think no one knows what you've been up to? Even Rhysand, who is barely in the house, the moment he decides to visit and then he leaves, he tells Cassian, I don't know what the fuck the two of you have been doing in this house, but it reeks of sex. I'm telling you, this entire house, their entire closet, all of it needs to be deep cleaned every single day. No, every single hour, because that's how often they're doing it. I would literally rather walk inside a porta potty or a frat house after they throw a party than walk into this nasty ass house that's reeking of sex and where people are giving blowjobs in the middle of the dining table. Ya fucking nasty. So Azriel is supposed to be at the same house as a chaperone. What is he even doing as a chaperone? He's done nothing. The poor guy is just loitering around the house smelling Cassian's balls as if it's a new air freshener. Is there a maid at the house too? Who's cleaning this shit up? This is nasty. The floors are fucking sticky. The ceilings are also sticky for some reason. The walls are painted white and not the kind of white you're thinking of. These are unlivable conditions. You cannot be fucking living this way. Even Rhysand says, I told Azriel playing chaperone would be useless. That is the only thing that I have agreed with Rhysand in the entire book. The reason why I say this is the only thing I agree with Rhysand about is because for the rest of the book, he is so insufferably annoying, even more so than before. It is revealed that Feyre is now pregnant, and because she is pregnant, that has given him some excuse to be totally possessive and not let anybody even touch her or stay close to her, including their own friends. For example, there is a part early on in the book where Cassian and Feyre are talking because they're friends and they're all like a found family here. Cassian leans in to kiss her on the cheek, but it says he only got within an inch of her face before his lips met night-kissed steel. So he gets blocked off by a shield, and he says that level of protection is insane. To which Feyre replies, so is Rhys. Cassian sniffed, trying and failing to detect her scent. He's got your scent shielded too? Feyre grinned. It's all part of the same shield. Hellion wasn't joking about it being impenetrable. Not only did he put a shield on Feyre so that nobody could kiss her, he also put a shield so that nobody could smell her. And Feyre is just like, oh, that's just Rhysand. He won't let anybody but himself interact with me, so I'm totally isolated in my own literal bubble. Really? I guess it wasn't your choice, Feyre. I guess all that talk about you having choices was a fucking fluke. So because Feyre is pregnant, she kind of just has to stay by herself and do her own thing and not go onto any missions. Later on, when there is a mission involving the cauldron, which is this thing that had turned the sisters into fairies in the first place, she is not able to go because it would be too dangerous for her and the baby. Elaine, the other sister, is now gonna go instead, but Nesta is really against it because she's very protective over her sister. So the girlies start fighting. Nesta says, go drink and fuck strangers, but stay away from the cauldron. To which Feyre replies, it is Elaine's choice, Nesta. Huh, funny how we're talking about choices. Wonder where you got that from. And then Elaine actually argues back against her. To which Nesta replies, look who decided to grow claws after all. Maybe you'll become interesting at last, Elaine. Ooh. Honestly, she ain't wrong, because Elaine is kind of just there. Elaine replies back, I went into the cauldron too, you know, and it captured me. And yet somehow all you think of is what my trauma did to you. Ooh. Bitch, perhaps she snapped. This fight is getting juicy, dude. The girlies are angry and they are not holding back. Nesta doesn't want Elaine to go on the mission, so Nesta herself decides to go instead. Another character asks her if she's afraid, and Nesta says, what choice do I have? Rhysand decides to pipe in and say, you do have a choice. You will always have a choice here. Do we though? Do we really have a choice? Because 100 pages later, Rhysand explains that there are gonna be complications with Feyre giving birth, aka if Feyre gives birth to this baby, she and the baby are gonna die. He decides not to tell her about these medical complications. There's a conversation that Rhysand has with Cassian between just the two of them, where he says that the baby has wings, which is super dangerous to give birth to because Feyre is currently in her human form. Majda has put a ban on any more shapeshifting. She says that to alter Feyre's body in any way right now could put the baby at risk. On the chance that it could be bad for the baby, Feyre is forbidden to so much as change the color of her hair until after the birth. Rhysand is super stressed out about this, and this is only information that he knows, and he decides to tell it to Cassian instead of Feyre. And he tells him, no one says a word about this to Feyre. No one. Cassian runs off to tell Nesta about it. The problem is the birth. Half Illyrians are extremely uncommon, but Rhys's mother was Illyrian herself, and Illyrian women hardly ever marry and reproduce outside their communities. Illyrian males do so far more often, or at least fuck around, but you rarely see the offspring. Illyrian females have a pelvis shaped specifically for children with wings to pass through. High Fae females do not, and when a child has wings, they can get stuck during labor. Most females die, the babes with them. There's no way for magic to help, short of fracturing a female's pelvis to widen it for the birthing, which might kill the babe anyway. Feyre is going to die? Her words were a whisper. A few do survive, but the labor is so brutal that many of them either come close to death or are so altered by it that they can't have another child. Even with a healer to repair them? Honestly, I don't know, and any attempts in the past to cut the child out of the mother's womb have been ... He shuddered. No mother has ever survived, so we won't even try that route. Majda will be there each step of the way doing whatever she can, and we don't know how Feyre's own magic will impact the birth. Is Feyre distraught? She doesn't know the full scope of it, but all of us who have grown up here know what it means for a high fae female to bear a baby with wings. You're basically telling me that the baby is about to fucking rip through the uterus with his wings, and you still don't want to tell Feyre about it. Rhysand, her own husband, who always preaches about giving everyone a choice, especially women, is like, gee, my wife is gonna go through the super dangerous childbirth. Nah, she doesn't need to know about it. He'll tell Cassian, and Cassian will tell Nesta, and everyone in the book will know about it, except for the actual mother who's gonna give birth to the baby and die. That makes sense to me. Now that Nesta knows about it, she is obviously distraught. This is a very serious conversation between Nesta and Cassian, where she finds out that her sister is literally gonna die, and yet somehow the conversation between the two of them goes down a different route. Cassian said after a moment, why haven't you sought me out? She let her own voice drop too. Why haven't you sought me? I'm taking my cues from you. You seem to have no interest in me after. I didn't hurt you, did I? Nesta let out a rough laugh. No, you didn't hurt me. I loved it when you fucked my mouth, Cassian. His eyes darkened. She rose and he went wholly still as she rounded the table and came to a stop beside his chair. Do you want to fuck me on this table? She asked softly, running a hand over the smooth surface. Girl, you just found out your sister is about to die from giving birth to a freak baby, and then you just changed the subject so quick. These two were like, damn, that sucks. Anyway, time to fuck on the table where people eat. So now we return back to the excessive sex scenes as if any serious conversation never happened at all. But before we get into that, I do want to backtrack a little bit and point out that earlier in the conversation between Rhysand and Cassian, when he was talking about the complications with Feyre's pregnancy, there was another thing that they were stressed out about. Asriel says, Feyre won't show for another few weeks, but someone will notice soon enough. People will learn of her pregnancy. And then there's a beat for a little bit, and he continues, and Tamlin will learn. This is it. This is the page 332 where I realized that Tamlin even existed in the first place. I was like, Tamlin, who? Oh shit, that guy is still here. I think this is why I had more interest in this book than the other books, because Tamlin didn't exist. It was like I lived in this world where we could all peacefully coexist and just suck each other's balls without a care in the world. And it was so nice. It truly has made me realize how much Tamlin drags the story. I feel like in every book we've read, we had to deal with Tamlin being an abusive asshole and all the other characters angsting about Tamlin, and we had to deal with the constant drama that he brought upon, and it was so nice to get a fucking break from him for once and just tickle each other's balls like we were meant to do. Cassian shot Asriel a warning glare, but Ace said, unafraid and unbowed, we need to be prepared for any fallout. To which Rhysand replies, like I give a fuck about Tamlin right now. Period, bitch! No one gives a fuck about him. Let's move on already. We were just chilling, sucking each other's titties. It was all good. We don't need to bring him up again. Cassian says he may react badly. Tamlin's already hanging by a thread. You and Lucien have made it clear that he's barely improved this past year. Learning of Feyre's pregnancy might make him crumble again. Dude, please do not throw Tamlin into this baby mama drama. I literally did not even think about how Tamlin would react to the pregnancy because that's how little of a shit I give about him. He's hanging by a thread. The baby news will set him on edge. Does he literally have no life? Does he just spend his entire life angsting over this one woman that he lost? Is he just sitting around wondering what Feyre is up to? He has no other hobbies going on? Please, let's just move on. I don't want any threat of ever seeing Tamlin again. With that in mind, let's go back to Nesta and Cassian and their sexy times. Listen, if we don't care that her sister is gonna die from her freak baby, we're definitely not gonna care about a loser named Tampon, okay? So let's move on. In the next chapter, there is a part where Nesta has to close her eyes and enter this void so that she can find something called the MISC, which is, I don't know, it's part of their mission that they're going on. I don't really care about this shit. The only reason why I'm bringing it up is because in this scenario, she's closing her eyes, she's getting into the zone, the other fairies are standing around waiting for her. It's been a long time and they get concerned that she has now been lost into the void. Feyre is trying to pull her out, but nobody can reach her. Get her out, Rhys, Cassian demanded. Get her out now. I can't, he said softly. The doors to her mind were open the other night. They're shut now. She doesn't want us seeing her, or us, Feyre said. She's locked it out, but also locked herself in. Cassian's stomach twisted. Nesta, he said into her ear. Nesta, open your hand and come back. Her breathing sharpened. The cold deepened. Nesta, he snarled. So they're trying to get her attention. They're trying to wake her up so that she doesn't get lost in the fucking abyss or whatever. He grabs her hand and he says, let go of the stones and bones. And then you and I can play. He said this, letting her sense his heat and need, forcing himself to remember that taunting kiss at dinner and her promise to let him fuck her wherever he wished in the house, what it had done to him, how much he had ached. He let it all blaze in his eyes, let the scent of his arousal wrap around her. Everyone tensed as he leaned in, head dipping, and kissed her. And that's how he was able to wake her up. It's almost like Sleeping Beauty, where the prince wakes up the princess with true love's kiss, except Cassian wakes up Nesta with the incentive of them fucking later on. That's how you get anyone to do anything in this book. You just promise them that they're gonna get dicked down later. That's literally all their motivations throughout the entire book. That's how they get anything done. You just promise them, you gonna get dick down later tonight? Do you want it or not? All right, well, you're gonna have to do this thing first, finish your chores, and then later we're gonna get dick down real good. So let's move forward to later in the book when she did indeed get dicked down. His jaw tightened and he seemed to struggle with some internal battle before he said darkly, I'll take whatever you offer me. He leaned in, his body still not touching hers, and said against her ear, and I'll take you however you wish me to. Her toes curled on the stones, her hair dripping, and if I wish to take you? He smiled against her ear, then I'll beg you to ride me into oblivion. Into oblivion? This bitch just got out of the void. Now you want to have her create a new one? Imagine riding someone into oblivion. You're like, hello! This dick feel good though! He clamped her nipple between his thumb and forefinger, the demand in it enough that she looked up at his face. He was a portrait of male arrogance, a warrior poised to conquer, and she nearly climaxed at the sight of it. So now it's a bunch of pages of sexy times. I'm gonna try to go over it really quickly. They start to have some dirty talk, blah, blah, blah. She went molten, and from the way his wings tucked in, she knew he could scent the wetness building between her thighs. Cassian gently pulled her wet hair from her breasts. Words eluded her. She couldn't remember any of them, couldn't remember anything except that one finger, circling her nipple, her entire body throbbing with need. Wow, she can't remember a single word. He touched her nipple, and she became illiterate. Do you still taste me days later? She couldn't answer, couldn't reveal the truth. His fingers clamped on her nipples, drawing just enough pain that she went wholly wet. Did you? Yes, I tasted you for days. Days later? Girl, please take some Listerine. Imagine talking to Nesta days later and she still has that dick breath. That shit is potent. Okay, so we're gonna try to speed through the sex. He's licking her coochie, her body is aching, his hands are gripping her ass, blah, 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 lickety splickety. He slides 2 fingers in her again. He asks her, how do you want it? She gasps out, hard. He says, thank the mother. And then he goes at her hard. My question is, whose mother are you talking about? Whose mom wants to know about this, Cassian? Now there is some penetration going on. He pulled outward again, the movement long enough this time that she knew he was nearly all the way in. He halted, his cock barely inside her, and studied her face. A conquering warrior god. He had called her Lady Death, and he was her sword. Cassian leaned down to kiss her, and as his tongue slid into her mouth, he thrust home in a mighty final push. Okay, so he's literally spearing her with his fucking sword of a penis, I guess. Nothing had ever felt so good, so full, so burning with pleasure. Nothing had ever felt like this. Nothing. It wasn't enough though. Wasn't close to enough. She wanted Cassian roaring, wanted him so lost that he couldn't remember his own name. That's right. That's the bar we're going for. The goal is to not remember any names, any words. It has to be so good that you can't even speak a single language anymore. I want you deeper. Cassian panted, eyes wild as she crawled out of his arms, as she turned onto her stomach and lifted her backside for him, offering herself. He made a low sound of need. She arched her hips higher, inviting him to take, to feast. He was on her in an instant, lifting her hips higher as he sheathed himself in a single thrust. Nesta screamed then, a sound of such pleasure she knew it echoed off the mountains, feeling him hit the deepest spot of her. Can you imagine if you were just chilling on a mountain, you're going on a nice hike, and you just hear screams echoing in the distance? Not only screams, but the sound of balls slapping against skin. I'm not even joking, because on this same page, it says he was snarling with desire, slamming home so hard his balls slapped against her. You telling me this shit is like boxing, where his balls are just like... He truly came in like a wrecking ball. Seeds are also mentioned a lot throughout their sex scenes, so let me read out every sentence that involves it. Cassian roared, the sound echoing through the room, and he became utterly wild as release found him, and he spilled into her with such force that his seed ran down her thighs. 2 paragraphs later, Cassian lay buried in her, and it felt so good, so right, that she wanted him always this deep in her, his seed spilling down her legs forever. Then a few paragraphs later, it says, Cassian went still, but he gently extracted himself from her in a long, long pull. He dragged his seed with him, and another rush of it tickled down her thighs, dripping on the blanket as he pulled out fully. Then towards the end of the page, when he leaves, she stared at the door, puzzling over his exit, so swift that his seed still leaked out of her. In these 2 pages, seeds are mentioned leaking down her 4 times. Why are there so many seeds? Are we planting a garden? I shouldn't enjoy seeing that so much, he growled. Her breast tightened, but she asked coyly, seeing what? You, covered in me, that beautiful sex of yours. She blushed and lowered her body to the mattress. No one has ever called it beautiful. It is. It's the most beautiful I've ever seen. Wow, so romantic. and they say chivalry is dead. So then the next day, they're at training, and of course, there is more innuendo and sexual tension. He is instructing Nesta and the other priestesses, who, by the way, have been traumatized by various experiences with sexual assault. He gives them instructions on how to hold the sword. The real sword weighs more. Put a double-handed grip on the hilt, and don't choke up too close to the shaft. Bro, don't choke up too close to the shaft. Ooh, nice one, bro. No, we are not gonna do this. I have had enough of your innuendo at training and making everyone in the room uncomfortable. Now, what's weird about this is that 10 pages later, Nesta decides to practice mindfulness and meditation with the other girls. Start over if you lose count, Gwyn said, as if she had heard the halt of Nesta's steady breathing. Nesta did so, focusing on the breaths and not Elaine. I acknowledge this thought about my sister, and I am letting it go. I acknowledge these thoughts, and I am letting them go. Nesta inhaled an 8th time. I am focusing on my breathing. These thoughts exist, and I am letting them pass me by. Nesta took another breath, forced her mind to think only of her breathing. When you finish your next set of 10, Gwyn said, near and yet far away, stop counting your breaths and just let your mind do as it wishes. We'll do that for a few heartbeats, then stop. The goal is to work up to longer and longer periods of this. I have practiced mindfulness before. I have practiced meditation before. This is something I often do when I deal with like my depression, anxiety. It's something that my therapist recommend to me. So it is something that is good standard practice. Literally the same line where you think, I acknowledge these thoughts and I am letting them go. These are all real things that people should be practicing. But it's just weird to see Nesta acting totally zen and healing right after she just got dicked down. What a roller coaster we've been on. First you're getting dicked down, and now you're doing yoga. First you were doing it doggy style, and now you're doing another kind of doggy style. But Nesta and Cassian aren't the only ones horny. We can't forget Rhysand and his innuendo as well. Feyre and Rhysand are talking, and Feyre says, can you show Nesta how to word it herself? Something perhaps with a bit more ... oomph? Yeah, she literally says oomph. I have the proof right here. Her vocabulary is so stunted, she can only say oomph. Oomph? Rhys asked, lifting an eyebrow. Oomph, Feyre said, throwing him a glare. Bitch, what kind of dialogue is this? Are we talking like The Sims now? We can't all be silver-tongued like you. Rhys winked. Good thing you benefit from it, Feyre darling. Cassian chose to ignore the innuendo and the flicker of arousal from both of them. Bitch, please get a fucking room. And then when Feyre leaves, it says that she rises from the chair. Cassian didn't miss the sultry look his high lady gave Rhys as she passed by, aiming for the rooms at the northern end of the palace. And he didn't miss the deep laugh Rhys gave her in return, full of sensual promise. Bitch, please. I cannot visit any of their houses. I just know it's stinky. Sarah J. Maas really wants you to know that even in a book dedicated to Nesta and Cassian, you still need to know that Feyre and Rhysand are having sex. Lots of it. All the time. We all know it. Just like how we all know that Feyre is gonna die if she gives birth to the baby. Oh wait, we don't all know it because Feyre doesn't know about it. Awkward. Which makes it really ironic later on when Nesta is in the room and Rhysand tells her to accompany Cassian for this mission that he's going on. She asks him why, and Rhysand says, because you savor playing the game. And then he adds, but it's your choice. Rhysand, stop saying that. You're not even following your own advice. Is it only because you're saying it to Nesta now? So now Nesta has a choice, but not Feyre, your wife who you're literally withholding medical information from her? Anyway, before they go on their mission, it's time to go back to sexy times. I have talked about this book for so long that now my camera needs to be charged. So I will be back real soon.
Take me to church, I worship like a dog at the shrine.